Sometimes people mistake quiet confidence for weakness. They see someone calm, composed, and assume they've lost their edge, that they've got nothing left to prove. But the truth is, the most dangerous person in the room is usually the one who doesn't need to show it. That's exactly what happened that night in Tokyo, when a cocky young black belt walked up to Jason Statham, laughed and said, "Fight me, old geezer." Everyone laughed with him. But when Jason stepped onto the mat, everything changed. Before we continue, if you've been following our stories, thank you for being part of this community, where respect, humility, and courage still mean something. And if you're new here, welcome. Because what happened next wasn't just a fight, it was a lesson that left an entire arena speechless. The arena was buzzing long before the first match began. It was one of those martial arts exhibitions where veterans and rising stars came together, a showcase of strength, precision, and respect. Cameras lined the edge of the mat, and the audience filled every seat, their chatter rising like a steady drumbeat beneath the arena lights. On the far side, a group of young martial artists warmed up full of energy, their laughter echoing across the polished floor. Among them stood Ethan Cole, a 26-year-old black belt who'd been gaining attention online for his flashy techniques and showman attitude. He was fast, confident, and skilled, but above all, he knew it. He wasn't there to learn, he was there to impress. "Hey, Ethan," one of his friends said, nudging him with a grin, "you see who's here?" Ethan looked up, wiping sweat from his brow. "Who?" The guy tilted his chin toward the entrance, and there he was. Jason Statham. The crowd noticed too. A quiet murmur spread as the actor, dressed in a simple black t-shirt and jeans, walked toward the edge of the mat. No entourage, no cameras, just him. The announcer's voice boomed over the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special guest with us today, a lifelong martial artist, competitor, and Hollywood legend. Please welcome Jason Statham." The crowd erupted into applause. Jason gave a small nod, his trademark half-smile appearing for just a moment. He looked calm, grounded, like a man who'd spent a lifetime learning to control his power rather than prove it. But to Ethan and his friends, that calmness looked like something else. It looked like age. Like vulnerability. "Man, he's what, 50-something?" Ethan scoffed under his breath. "I bet I could take him in one round." His friends laughed. "You wouldn't dare." "Oh, I would," Ethan said, smirking. "Just for fun. He won't actually fight back, these old-school guys never do. They're all talk about discipline and control. Watch." After the demonstration ended, the announcer invited volunteers from the audience to participate in a friendly sparring round, just for entertainment. A few students stepped forward, bowing respectfully to the instructors. Then from the corner, Ethan raised his hand. "I'll go." The crowd turned. Jason was standing a few feet away, chatting quietly with one of the judges. Ethan looked straight at him and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "How about it, old geezer? You up for a little match?" The room went still. A few gasps rippled through the crowd. One of the instructors tried to intervene. "Ethan, that's not appropriate." But Jason just raised a hand, his calm voice cutting through the tension. "It's all right." He turned slowly, meeting Ethan's smirk with steady eyes. "You sure you want to do that, son?" Ethan grinned. "Why not? It's just a spar." Jason's jaw tightened ever so slightly. "Sparring's about respect. You up for that too?" Laughter broke out from Ethan's friends. "Come on, old man, don't make excuses," one of them called. Jason took a deep breath, rolled his shoulders once, and stepped onto the mat. The crowd erupted again, some cheering, others whispering nervously. The referee hesitated, then nodded. "All right, gentlemen, light contact only. This is for demonstration, not competition." Jason gave a small nod. Ethan cracked his neck dramatically and grinned. They bowed. Ethan's movements were sharp, showy, bouncing on his heels like a performer more than a fighter. Jason, on the other hand, stood still, centered, his feet planted, eyes focused. The bell rang. Ethan darted forward instantly, fast, aggressive, trying to impress. He threw a quick jab combo, followed by a spinning back kick. The crowd gasped as Jason slipped aside effortlessly, his movements precise and almost too calm. "Not bad," Jason said softly. Ethan smirked, just warming up Grandpa. He came in again, faster this time, a flurry of punches aimed at Jason's chest. Jason blocked, parried, and sidestepped, each motion small and efficient, conserving energy. Then in a blur, Ethan tried a high kick, fast but sloppy. Jason ducked under it, pivoted, and tapped Ethan's back lightly with an open palm. "Point," the referee said automatically. The crowd cheered. Ethan's smile faltered. "Lucky shot," he muttered, adjusting his stance. Jason didn't respond. He just waited, calm, collected. Round 2 began. This time, Ethan went in hard, ignoring the light contact rule. His strikes were sharper now, frustration bleeding through his technique. Jason deflected each one like water flowing around stone. Then, as Ethan lunged forward recklessly, Jason stepped aside and swept his leg just enough to unbalance him. Ethan stumbled forward, catching himself awkwardly. The audience laughed, but Jason didn't. He simply said, "Control your balance." That tone, not mocking, not angry, just measured, made Ethan's blood boil. He swung again, harder, sloppier. Jason ducked beneath the blow, shifted his weight, and this time, with a flick of precision, caught Ethan's wrist mid-strike and twisted gently but firmly. Ethan gasped, his knees bending involuntarily from the pressure. Jason's voice was quiet, "That's enough." But Ethan didn't stop. He yanked his arm free and tried to counter with a wild punch. Jason sighed, and in one fluid motion, sidestepped, trapped his arm again, and took him down with a clean judo sweep that ended with Ethan flat on his back. The thud echoed through the arena. Silence followed. Jason let go immediately, stepping back. He bowed slightly. "You fought well." The referee called it, point match Jason Statham. The crowd burst into applause, some standing, others cheering wildly. Ethan stayed on the mat, red-faced, his ego bruised deeper than his body. Jason offered him a hand. "Get up, son." Ethan hesitated, glaring, but something in Jason's eyes, calm, firm, almost fatherly, broke through the pride. He took the hand, standing slowly. "You've got power," Jason said quietly, "but power without control, that's just chaos." Ethan swallowed hard, his chest rising and falling. "You didn't even try." Jason tilted his head. "You don't need to fight to win, lad. Sometimes the real battle is with your own ego." The crowd, still buzzing, went silent again. Jason turned to them and said simply, "Respect, that's what martial arts is built on. Remember that." Then he stepped off the mat, leaving behind a stunned hush that no one quite knew how to break. But that wasn't the end. What no one in the audience knew was that the real test, the one that would change Ethan forever, was still to come. Later that night, when the lights dimmed and the crowds left, Ethan found himself walking toward the locker room, his thoughts spinning. The humiliation burned, but deeper still was something else, a gnawing sense of guilt. He'd mocked a man who had done nothing but show him restraint. When he pushed open the locker room door, he froze. Jason was there, sitting quietly on a bench, tying his shoes, the same calm expression on his face. Ethan opened his mouth to speak, but the words caught in his throat. Jason looked up. "Good match." Ethan exhaled, his voice low. "I'm sorry." Jason nodded once. "You've got talent. Just remember, what you do with it defines who you are." Ethan nodded silently, his pride crumbling into something new, respect. The next day, videos of the match flooded the internet. Clips titled, "Young Fighter Challenges Jason Statham, Instantly Regrets It," racked up millions of views overnight. But Jason didn't care about the views. He didn't post, didn't comment. For him, it wasn't about proving a point, it was about teaching one. And for Ethan, that lesson would echo long after the cameras stopped rolling. Because what happened next would take that respect and turn it into redemption, in a way that no one in that arena ever saw coming. 2 weeks passed. The video of Ethan's defeat had circled the internet countless times by then. Clips of Jason's effortless calmness, the sidesteps, the takedown, the simple "you fought well," had turned into memes, slow-motion replays, and motivational edits with titles like "Humility Defeats Ego." For most, it was entertainment. For Ethan, it was torment. Every scroll through social media was a reminder of the moment he fell flat, not just on the mat, but in spirit. Every comment saying, that kid got schooled, or Jason taught him respect without even breaking a sweat, stung more than the fall itself. He hadn't been able to sleep much since. His coach had tried to talk to him, so had his friends, but the noise drowned out everything. He couldn't train, couldn't focus. The dojo felt heavier now, the air thick with quiet judgment every time he walked in. One night after hours, Ethan stood alone in the empty training hall. The mats were still cool under the fluorescent lights. He looked at his reflection in the mirror, black belt tied around his waist, his hair damp with sweat. "Who are you even trying to prove this to?" he muttered under his breath. That's when his coach, Master Taekda, stepped out from the shadows. He was in his late 60s, a man whose presence carried decades of quiet authority. "Still here, Ethan?" he asked softly. Ethan turned, startled. "Yeah, I was just—" Taekda nodded slowly, thinking. Ethan sighed, rubbing his face. "Everyone saw it. I made a fool of myself. All those years training and I'm just a joke now." Taekda studied him. "You fought well." Ethan frowned. "No, I didn't. He toyed with me. He embarrassed me." The old master shook his head. "No, he showed you there's a difference." Ethan looked down, his fists tightening. "Then why does it hurt so much?" Taekda smiled faintly. "Because you care, that's good. Pain reminds us there's something worth learning." There was silence for a moment before Ethan finally asked, "Do you know him, Statham?" Taekda nodded. "We trained together once a long time ago, before the fame. He's the real thing, humble, grounded. When he fights, it's never about winning." Ethan hesitated. Do you think he'd talk to me?" Taekda looked at him carefully. "You're not asking to fight him again, are you?" Ethan shook his head quickly. "No, I need to understand what he meant about control, about respect." The master's expression softened. "Then go find him, but not as a challenger, as a student." 3 days later, Ethan found himself outside a small, private gym on the edge of London, the kind of place that didn't even have a sign. Just a worn-out door, the faint sound of pads being hit inside, and a single mat visible through the glass window. He hesitated before knocking. "Come in," a voice said from inside. Ethan pushed the door open, and there he was. Jason Statham, in a gray hoodie and training pants, was finishing a sparring session with a young fighter. He moved with that same quiet grace, no wasted motion, no showing off. Every strike had purpose. When he noticed Ethan, he held up a hand to his partner. "That's enough for today." He wiped his face with a towel, then turned toward the door. "Didn't think I'd see you again, kid." Ethan swallowed hard. I wanted to apologize again." Jason chuckled. "You already did, remember." "Yeah," Ethan said, his voice quieter now. "But this time I mean it more." Jason studied him, that same steady gaze from the arena. "You look different, lighter." Ethan smiled faintly. "I've been thinking a lot. My master said I should come find you. He told me you were the real deal." Jason leaned against the wall, crossing his arms. "Taekda still teaching, huh?" Ethan's eyes widened. "You do know him?" Jason nodded. "Yeah, he's the reason I learned control. I was a lot like you once." Ethan blinked. "You?" Jason smirked. "Hot-headed. Thought I could take anyone. Then I learned the hard way that fighting isn't about proving you're stronger, it's about proving you can stop yourself when it matters." Ethan nodded slowly. "That's what I don't get. You could have crushed me that day. Why didn't you?" Jason shrugged. "Because the lesson would have been wasted if I did. You needed humility, not pain." Ethan looked down. "Well, you gave me both." Jason chuckled softly. "Good, then you're halfway there." Over the next few weeks, Ethan started training at Jason's gym. Not as a celebrity student or a guest, just another guy in the class, sweating, learning, listening. Jason didn't treat him differently. He didn't mention the viral video, didn't bring up the past. He just drilled the basics, again and again. "Balance," Jason would say, nudging Ethan's stance with his foot. "It's not just physical, it's mental. Every strike has intention, every breath has purpose." Sometimes Jason would stop mid-session, point to the mirror and say, "That's your opponent, not the guy across from you, him." Ethan started to get it. One night after a long sparring session, Ethan sat on the edge of the mat, drenched in sweat. Jason handed him a bottle of water and sat beside him. "Feels different now, doesn't it?" Jason said. Ethan nodded. Yeah, it's not about hitting anymore, it's about feeling. Jason smiled. Now you're learning. Ethan looked down at his hands. I wish I'd learned it sooner. Jason shook his head. You learned it when you were ready, that's how it works. Months passed. Ethan's reputation started to shift. The same people who once mocked him began to see something else in him: composure, focus. He wasn't the cocky kid chasing likes anymore. He was the disciplined fighter people respected. One day, the organizers of that same martial arts exhibition invited him back. This time, not as a show-off, but as a guest performer. When Ethan told Jason, he chuckled. Full circle, huh? Ethan smiled. Yeah, I want to make it right. Jason nodded. Then make it mean something. The night of the event arrived. The arena looked almost the same: bright lights, cheering crowd. But Ethan felt completely different walking onto that mat. No cameras. No ego. Just peace. When the announcer called his name, the audience erupted, some remembering him from the viral clip, others curious to see what he'd become. But the real surprise came when the announcer said, and joining him for a demonstration, please welcome Jason Statham. The crowd roared. Jason stepped onto the mat, his expression unreadable but calm. He bowed slightly to Ethan. Ethan bowed back. This time there were no taunts. No jokes. Just silence, the respectful kind. The referee nodded, ready. Jason raised his hands. Show me what you've learned. The match began. Ethan moved differently now, slower, deliberate, grounded. His breathing steady, his stance solid, every motion controlled. Jason tested him with quick feints, small pushes. Ethan adapted, not reacting out of impulse but awareness. The crowd leaned in, expecting an explosive fight, but what they saw instead was something rarer: two martial artists moving like a mirror reflection of mutual respect. Jason blocked a strike, and instead of countering, he nodded approvingly. Better. Ethan smiled faintly, sweat dripping down his temple. I had a good teacher. They circled again. Jason stepped in, sweeping a low kick. Ethan countered with a measured grab, controlled, balanced, and instead of striking, he paused mid-motion and released. The crowd gasped. Jason looked at him and smiled. Now that's control. The referee called the match soon after, but it didn't matter who won. When Jason raised Ethan's arm to the crowd, the arena erupted in applause, not for victory, but for transformation. Later that night in the locker room, Ethan sat beside Jason once more, just like the first time they'd met there. Jason handed him a towel. You did good, kid. Ethan laughed softly. Guess I finally learned what you meant. Jason nodded. Fighting's easy, restraint's the real art. Ethan looked at him with a small grin. You think I'm ready to teach others? Jason smirked. You already are. The moment you stop fighting for ego, you start teaching by example. They sat in silence for a moment, two generations connected not by fame or competition, but by respect. Weeks later, a short video clip from that night began circulating online. It wasn't flashy, no knockouts, no slow-motion edits, just Jason raising Ethan's hand as the crowd applauded. The caption read, "The student who learned what fighting really means." But the top comment summed it up best. He didn't lose the first time, he just hadn't learned yet. Sometimes, the loudest moment in an arena isn't the cheer after a win. It's the silence after a lesson, when everyone watching realizes what true strength looks like. And that night, Jason Statham didn't just silence a crowd. He reminded the world that respect, not power, is what makes a real fighter.